Someone waiting to come in. So welcome, Tess. Thank you for being here. I think these conversations are super important. We're all trying to navigate a pretty difficult time, I would say, in our careers. And so, like I said, the content in this presentation isn't necessarily revolutionary, but I think that taking some intentional time to reflect on what we do is important. And so here we go. Okay, so the plan for today, I'm going to chat about why this presentation was made, how reflection was a big part of my work this past year, and how the heck I made sense around what I was reflecting on. Because I think often we do reflection and think about things, but it can be really hard to actually know what to do with this information we just reflected on. And so we're going to talk a little bit also about assessment, cue the eye roll, but it's an important part, and the role that assessment can kind of play in us thinking about the work we do. Okay, so the background of this presentation is pre-pandemic, and so for me myself, I just before COVID kind of hit our institution, I wasn't necessarily feeling burnt out, but I had lots of energy, but I didn't necessarily know where to use it. I was filling my days with emails and meetings. I was doing things and working hard, to my standards at least, but it was hard to pinpoint. You know, when I looked back at a week, I was like, where did this week go? What did I actually do? And so I knew that I was doing everything I needed to do, but I wanted to understand more if I was doing everything I wanted to do or everything that I could do. So I hope that makes sense. And so, you know, for me, I couldn't really pinpoint, you know, was this just a weird day that I was having, a weird week, a weird month? But I wanted to really start to understand, you know, why I was feeling kind of so maybe in the weeds with, you know, am I doing everything I can in my role to make the difference that I want to be making? So one day I started asking myself kind of some random questions, and I found a journal where I had these questions down, which led me to this presentation. And I laughed because so much of my position has changed due to COVID. But I thought it would be helpful for me to go through some of the questions I had asked myself, and hopefully it will help you the same way that it's helped me. You know, especially as we all go back to kind of our normal-ish jobs. You know, I've certainly felt different, not necessarily bad different, and I've spoken to a lot of people who are feeling the same thing around, you know, our jobs are looking a little bit different right now, and so how do we kind of come back to this understanding or place where we're feeling good about what we're doing. And so, going too fast here. So now we're going to ask, I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I had asked myself. And so I'm hoping that you can kind of pull out a piece of paper, if you're old school, or throw up a Microsoft Word document. You know, this is a pretty you know, challenge by choice here. If you're not into it, don't, you know, whatever, it's fine. But I'm hoping that you kind of can engage with some of these questions with me. And so the questions that I asked myself, and now you. So what motivated you to enter this field? What got you into the role you are in right now? And I'm hoping for just, you know, don't overthink this, some super quick, less than 20 words, you know, point form. What are the things that kind of motivated you to get into this field? Like I said, don't really overthink this, but I'm going to give you kind of 10 seconds, 20 seconds to jot down the first few things that come to your brain. for me myself, I really had no idea what I wanted to do with my career. And I really enjoyed the work that I had done as a student, and it was fun. I saw the impacts of my work daily talking to students, and so I wanted that feeling to continue. And when I first started my role as a wrestling side coordinator at Mount Royal, I loved the workplace. I loved my colleagues. I enjoyed going into work every day, having new problems to work through. And again, I was feeling that fun or that satisfaction, the fulfillment going in each day. And so the team aspect for me was highlighted in my early days, and that really what has motivated me to stay in this field is a lot of those reasons. For each one of these questions, I'll ask if anyone would like to share. So feel free. Does anyone have any thoughts? I can't see my participant list, so feel free to just jump in if you'd like.
Hey, Vaughn, maybe an idea would be for folks to just drop some of those thoughts into the chat.
Sure, yeah. I can't see the chat myself. So if anyone is typing in, feel free to. Oh, maybe I can. Oh, yes, I can. Stephen. Enjoyed the environment of higher education. Have generally always been surrounded by good colleagues who care about the work. Students enjoy the challenge. Absolutely. Kelsey, my own personal growth. That's a good one. During my undergrad, the chance to provide them with a similar experience. Nice. Mark had a great experience as a student and wanted to work providing that for others. Supporting students, planning fun things to do with them in residence, wanted a career and a sense of purpose, reflected deeply on my own college experience and the support I got through student affairs. Nice. Thank you, everyone. So, super broad question. I wanted to include it. This is a question that I had asked myself. So, what do you know about residence life and higher education? Like I said, this is a very broad question. You don't need to overthink it, but what are kind of the high level things that come to your head when I ask you this question? Yeah, not enough. There's really no bad way to answer this question either. I recognize this can be a hard one. It's a growing and developing field, absolutely. It's very dynamic, always changing. That was kind of one of the big things that I had written down was there are so many moving parts. There's so much happening, and more than just I think I had originally or initially noticed as a student staff member. There are different leaders and different leadership styles everywhere I looked. I did not feel like there was necessarily like consistent leadership styles that I was noticing, which I loved. I thought it was cool that everyone was kind of approaching this work in a different way. What I noticed in student affairs also is that I'm only in control of so many things. With there being so many things going on, I can't be in control of it all, and so even though I may like so many different things, I can't be in charge of it all, or I can't have my feet in every single bucket within the university. The other thing I've noticed is that there are gaps. Gaps exist. Not everything happens that you want to see, right? And I think that that's just a reality in life, and that was a big paradigm shift for me when I recognized that the gaps do exist, and that's okay, and everything that you hope to have happen may not. All right, next question. What do you want to be doing every day? So again, what are the first things that kind of come to your head when this question is asked for you or asked to you? Couple things here. Being in a good relationship with quality people, being a part of positive change, creative problem solving, being happy to be at work and seeing others in the same situation. For me, a big thing that came up was around my workplace culture and the environment that I was going into every day. I wanted it to be both positive for me and positive for students. And that, again, that doesn't even really answer that question, right? Because I, I so to go to more specific, I want to be planning. I want the program to evolve and to change with the changing times and the dynamic nature of our work. And so you know, when I think about what I want to do every day, I want to see those plans or those ideas I have being able, like me being able to work on those. Yeah, some very consistent thoughts around good colleagues and working together for a larger goal. Workplace satisfaction is a very big part of our happiness. So the next question I have is, what are you currently doing well? We don't necessarily have to get into a bragging session here, but this is a really important question, I think, for us to be able to answer personally. And so no pressure here to write anything in the chat, but I do want us to take a few minutes to write down, what do you think that you do really well in your role? And maybe to bounce off that, the next question is a little bit similar. So what goals do you have in your current role? So they're different questions, but a little bit more, I guess, personal or questions here that I'm hoping that you can take a couple minutes and think about. Does anyone need any more time? Kelsey, all right, thank you. I'm moving fast. This was, I had quite a bit of notes on these questions. Stephen's sharing here. Doing well, listening, adapting, advocating. So huge right now, absolutely. Goals, get back into more planful mode rather than a COVID reactive. Oh my gosh, yes. That's a great goal, because I feel like that's been a lot of what we have had to do this year is, you know, is react. And you're gonna see a little bit of that in my next slide. Any other thoughts folks would like to share? No pressure. Okay. So what can we do with this information? We just did a lot of reflection, and like I said at the beginning of the presentation, reflection's good, but then what do you actually do with it? And so for me, how I manage this, I had kind of three big realizations, and again, these aren't earth-shattering, but this is what I wrote down in my journal. And so for me, it's like, I can't do it all. I can't expect others to do it all. But knowing that we're all working towards the same goal, and knowing that there's only so much time in the day, helps remind me that, you know, it's okay if we can't get it all done, because we can only work so much, right? And I think we're all doing our best in prioritizing what we feel is most important. And so that was something that came up for me. The next big realization I had was that, in recognizing, so this kind of came from the question of what do we know about student affairs? And for me, one of the big takeaways was that there's a lot of different leadership styles, is that we can all learn from everyone, right? When we're looking at other leadership styles, there's both good traits and not so good traits that we can take away from that and grow as an individual from. And so when we look at, our supervisors or other leaders, we can say, like, I really love how this person did that. Or I don't necessarily agree or think that I would lead the same way in this certain situation. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And that was a big realization for me, is that we can all do, a lot of different things here. And that doesn't mean that, one way is wrong. The third realization I had was, I know that I have goals, and there's a lot of goals that I want to accomplish, and I have a vision and I want to work towards seeing it through. And so when I thought about what I was good at and what goals I had, it reminded me of how important they were, and that I needed to prioritize these. And so after these kind of realizations, I didn't really know, what I wanted to do. So I started thinking about how I was spending my time. And so I want to ask you the same question. How are you spending your time right now? What does your day-to-day look like? And so maybe your top 3 things that you would say that you do in a day. I'd like you to write those down either in the chat or privately for yourself. Stephen, emails, meetings, advancing projects, in that order. Oh my goodness, so many emails. They don't stop coming in. Kelsey, future planning, examining barriers to disclosures, exploring prevention opportunities. I think Mark is agreeing to the emails. Yep. Fantastic. Yeah, I found myself, when I answered this, like, how am I spending my time? The first word that came up for me was like reacting. And I was like, I'm reacting to just a lot of things. And like, I'd look ahead in a week and be like, oh, my week is pretty good. Like, I don't have that many meetings, or, there's going to be time for me to do things. And that changed so fast. Like, I come into Monday being like, oh, this week should be pretty quiet. And then, by the end of Monday or going into Tuesday afternoon, I'd be like, huh, my week is now full. And I found, and that's okay, I'm not complaining, but that's just how I found myself spending my time. And so then after I answered that question, I was like, okay, how the heck does the answer to my, how do I spend my time align with all my previous questions? And long story short, like, they weren't really aligning. Like, the things that I wanted to be doing, or the goals that I was setting, didn't necessarily always align with what I was actually doing every single day. And that was interesting to me to kind of see that misalignment. And again, that's not a bad thing. I think that I've still been doing, I'd like to think, good work and work that I think is meaningful and valuable. But especially during COVID and as we're kind of, maybe seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, I don't know, that was still happening. And so I'm interested to see how the next little bit, how that changes. Okay, so now that we have some thoughts on paper, specifically some things we know about higher ed, our intentions for our work, how we are actually doing our job. My question was, like, how do we not get caught up in the cycle that we kind of just talked about? And so the cycle of not really knowing how we're spending our time. That was my big worry, right? To look back at a week or a month and be like, I really don't know what I did. And I knew that I wanted to keep myself accountable. And so what I started to do was I put in a reminder each week into my calendar to intentionally check in and to spend a few intentional minutes a week over lunch and think about kind of what the big ticket items were, both in the previous week and in the week ahead. And then over every 2 months, I also have a block in my calendar to think about, like, okay, what have I done in the last 2 months? And so for our academic year, 8 months, that's a quarter. And so I was kind of looking quarterly, what have I been doing in the last 2 months? And so my game plan is to do a look over at the end of each year too. So that's why I have like formative and summative. So I like to think about it being like while the year is happening, and then also at the end of the year, what's the summary of what I've been doing. And for me, this has kind of been a game changer because I've been able to think back and look both at a week ahead and a week behind of what have I been doing and how does that align with what I want to be doing. And I think it's important to give yourself grace for when that doesn't necessarily align. And for myself, I've been finding that I've been able to be more productive and feeling really good about the work that I'm doing, knowing that my week fills up so quickly. I need to think ahead of where I can intentionally put in time to do work on things that matter, like that really matter to me, that were kind of in the top 3 goals that I want to accomplish and to go with my visions for the department and for my position in our front office and for work in general. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen here because I don't really have a thank you slide next, but I want to see you all. So what else do you think we can do? Is there hopefully these questions were a little bit helpful, but I'm hoping to generate maybe a little bit of a discussion that we can kind of chat about what the last little bit has looked like, and how can we make sure that we are still working on the things that excite us and have brought us to this work. So Jennifer, not to like point at you specifically, but being in your position for 16 years, like how do you kind of maintain that energy or like maintain or see your vision or your goals through, especially when during a time where I think we've been forced to work on certain things? I don't know if that's a good question, but
I'll do my best. I don't know that I have an outstanding answer for this. I think that the embracing of the nature of our work, if it's res life, if it's operations, marketing, communications, there's a dynamic nature to the opportunities that we can find in our work. Where the job I stepped into, I've been in the director position for just 9.5 years, and that role looked really different a decade ago. And some of it is the excitement around, like, what do I want to create and what do I see for the role? And a lot of it is just like responding to the trends, the demands, the needs that our students show up with in a different way, and knowing that like there's a foundation, for the work that we do, but a lot of it has to be really adaptable and dynamic, and kind of knowing like it's going to ebb and flow, it's going to evolve. So I think I just kind of come into the work with that sort of mindset, and it keeps it young and fresh and new and different. And sometimes it's hard because you feel like I should be able to do this with my eyes closed. And then there's just pieces of it that do feel a little bit like plug and play. And being able to like stay steady in some pieces of your role, I think allow you space to continue to make room for the things that just are uncertain or you didn't predict or might require you to learn a new tool, a new communications channel, whatever, right? Like social media is a big part of our role. And I feel like I am never going to know my job at 100% because that is never going to stay the same, right? So that's just like one very, very minute example. But I think there is a mentality to like come in with a mindset of knowing that like you're evolving the position and you're responding to things that are outside of your control, but there's also an excitement in knowing that it's going to keep the roles really different and new all the time. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Absolutely.
I think for me, because the role, so before my position, I was a live-in position. And because of COVID, the role had just changed so much. My role had gone from like meeting with students and like supporting students, supporting the RAs to like 90% COVID conduct. And just realizing like the position had changed into a position that I wasn't passionate about, that I wasn't super interested in, and kind of knowing that and being able to realize that, I think was really helpful, like with mental health, emotionally, but also like professionally, like being able to see when it might be time for you to jump ship. And if you are unable to kind of change your role, the bulk of that, because I think we all thought COVID was more temporary than it has turned out to be. So like looking long term, like how long could I have continued doing that role in that with that focus?
Kelsey, how do you, because one of the answers to your questions was how are you spending your time? And one of the things you answered was like future planning. Is that something that you intentionally put into your calendar to do each week? Or like how do you, I guess, like incorporate that future planning or that strategic planning in your calendar when it feels like you're, I don't know, pulled in all these different directions in a week?
So it's really interesting because half of my position is a brand new position. And so I have a lot of freedom to kind of make it my own. And my calendar is a lot more open than it was. But being able to like schedule specifically like meetings with student groups and get that feedback has been really helpful. So like being able to assess the students and their experiences to be able to put that into my future planning. And so basically anytime I'm not meeting with students, I am future planning, creating programs. And right now I'm working on a year at a glance and doing that. So I don't know if that's a good answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good. That's being able to flesh out your new role. And yeah,